Jack Wilson never expected to be the champion of Earth. He was just a simple mechanic from Ohio with strong hands and a quiet nature. The alien invasion 3 years ago had changed everything. The Valkyrie came with their sleek ships and advanced technology. They did not want to destroy humanity. They wanted to test it. The first ships appeared over major cities around the world, huge silver discs that blocked out the sun. People panicked at first, but the aliens made no hostile moves. They simply watched and waited. After 3 days, they sent a message to all human devices at once: "We are the Valkyrie. We seek worthy opponents." Governments scrambled to understand what this meant. Military forces around the world prepared for conflict. But the Valkyrie had no interest in that kind of war. They wanted ritual combat. Their society was built on tests of strength and skill. They believed that the true measure of any species was found in single combat. The Valkyrie ambassador was a tall female, with skin the color of the ocean and eyes like polished silver. Her name was unpronounceable to human tongues, so she called herself Tessa. She explained that the Valkyrie would select champions from Earth to face their warriors if the humans won. The Valkyrie would consider Earth worthy of alliance. If they lost, Earth would become a resource world. No one really understood what a resource world meant, but it sounded bad. The first duels took place in major cities. Valkyrie warriors faced soldiers, athletes, and martial artists. The aliens won most of these early matches. They were stronger, faster, and had natural armor under their skin. The few humans who won did so through cleverness and endurance qualities that impressed the Valkyrie Jack watched. All of this on the news from his small repair shop in Millfield, Ohio, a town so small it barely appeared on maps. He fixed cars and farm equipment for a living. His hands were calloused from years of hard work, his face weathered from time spent. Under the sun, he lived alone in a small house at the edge of town, with only a 3-legged dog named Buddy for company. The duels continued for months. The Valkyrie moved from major cities to smaller ones, testing the breadth of humanity. When they announced they would visit Millfield, no one could figure out why the town had only 5,000 people, with nothing special to offer. The mayor suggested they bypass Millfield entirely, but the Valkyrie insisted. 3 Valkyrie ships landed in the cornfield behind the high school. The whole town gathered to watch. They emerged from their ships with fluid grace, 7 feet tall with blue and teal skin. Their hair ranged from silver to deep purple. Their eyes glowed in the shadows. Tessa stood at the front and surveyed the crowd. "We seek your champion," she announced, her voice carrying across the field without any visible amplification. The humans looked at each other in confusion. Millfield had no champion. The high school football coach stepped forward. He was the strongest man in town, but he was 55 with a bad knee before he could volunteer. Jack found himself walking forward. He had no idea why he did it. Something about the way the aliens looked at the townspeople, like they were disappointed. It made something stir inside him. He cleared his throat. "I will stand for Millfield," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Tessa tilted her head, studying him. "You are not the strongest here," she observed. "Why do you step forward?" Jack shrugged. "I fix things when they break. Seems like things are broken right now." A murmur ran through the Valkyrie. They conferred among themselves in their musical language. Finally, Tessa nodded. "Very well. Jack of Millfield, you will face our champion." Zora stepped forward. She towered over Jack with muscles rippling under her blue skin. Her silver hair was tied in warrior braids, and her eyes glowed like mercury when she looked at him. She wore armor on her forearms and shins, but her torso was protected only by a tight-fitting garment that showed her alien physique. "The rules are simple," Tessa explained. "You will fight until one yields or cannot continue. There will be no weapons, no outside interference. The victor claims honor for their people." Jack nodded, though his mouth had gone dry. What exactly happened if he lost? Would the aliens destroy Millfield? Would they take people away? He wanted to ask, but something told him it was better not to show uncertainty. The duel would take place in 1 week. that gave Jack time to prepare, though he had no idea how to prepare for fighting an alien warrior. The town rallied around him. The football coach tried to teach him wrestling moves. The local boxing enthusiast showed him how to throw a proper punch. The librarian found what little information existed about Valkyrie physiology. Jack learned that the Valkyrie evolved on a high-gravity world, which made them incredibly strong on Earth. However, they tired more quickly in Earth's atmosphere. Their joints, particularly behind the knees and at the base of the neck, were less protected. Their reflexes, while faster than humans, could be predicted by watching their eyes. For 7 days, Jack trained harder than he ever had. In his life, he ran, he lifted. He practiced falling without hurting himself. He studied the few videos available of Valkyrie duels, looking for patterns. The whole time, Zora watched from a distance, her silver eyes never giving away her thoughts, and night before the duel, Jack sat on his porch with Buddy. The old dog sensed his anxiety and pressed against his leg. Jack scratched behind his ears. "Tomorrow, Buddy," he said, "we find out what happens to our town." Jack barely slept. His dreams were filled with glowing silver eyes and blue skin. When morning came, he felt strangely calm. He ate a simple breakfast, pulled on his work boots, and walked to the town square where the duel would take place. The entire population of Millfield had gathered to watch. Some looked hopeful, others terrified, all of them counting on him. Jack stepped into the simple circle drawn in the dirt. The Valkyrie had gathered on one side of the square, their tall forms casting long shadows in the morning light. Zora entered the circle from the opposite side. She moved with liquid grace, her mercury eyes fixed on Jack. She smiled, showing teeth that seemed just slightly too sharp. And so began the fight that would change not just Jack's life, but the fate of Earth itself. The duel began with Zora rushing forward like a blue blur. Jack barely had time to dodge her first strike. Her fist hit the ground where he had been standing, leaving a small crater in the dirt. The crowd gasped, but Jack had no time to react. He scrambled backward, trying to create distance between them. Zora smiled as she advanced on him. She was playing with him, testing his speed. He could see that now. Jack remembered what he had learned about Valkyrie physiology. They were stronger, but they tired more quickly in Earth's atmosphere. If he could make this fight last, he might have a chance. Jack circled carefully, keeping his guard up. Zora struck again and again. Each time Jack managed to evade, but just barely. He could feel the air displacement. As her fists and feet missed him by inches, he tried to counter-attack, but his blows seemed to bounce off her tough skin. She laughed, a musical sound that somehow made Jack even more determined. 20 minutes into the fight, Jack was breathing hard. Sweat poured down his face. His muscles burned from the constant tension of staying ready to move. But he noticed something important. Zora was breathing harder too. Her movements had slowed fractionally. Her attacks came with slightly longer pauses. Between them, the Earth atmosphere was affecting her just as he had hoped. Jack decided to risk a more aggressive approach. The next time Zora lunged at him, instead of backing away, he stepped to the side and struck at the back of her knee. It was like hitting steel, but Zora flinched. Her leg buckled slightly before she recovered. Jack felt a surge of hope. His research had been correct. That spot was vulnerable. Zora narrowed her silver eyes. She was no longer smiling. She came at Jack with renewed intensity. Her fist connected with his shoulder, spinning him around. The pain was immediate and intense. Jack felt something crack, but he managed to stay on his feet. The crowd groaned. Some looked away, certain the end was near. Jack used the momentum of the spin to create distance. He rolled his injured shoulder. Pain shot through his arm, but he could still move it. It wasn't broken, just badly bruised. He circled again, watching Zora's eyes for clues to her next move. When she blinked, he noticed. Her gaze flicked toward his left side. She was telegraphing her attacks. The next time she charged, Jack was ready. He stepped into the attack instead of away from it. He took a glancing blow to his ribs, but managed to strike the sensitive spot at the base of Zora's neck. Zora stumbled forward, her balance momentarily lost. Jack followed with another strike to the back of her knee. Zora dropped to one knee, her silver eyes wide with surprise. No human had lasted this long against her. No human had found her weak spots. But Jack was not celebrating yet. He knew she was still incredibly dangerous. Even kneeling, she was nearly as tall as him. Standing, with a roar that sounded like crashing waves. Zora surged upward, her arms encircled Jack's waist. In a crushing bear hug, Jack felt the air forced from his lungs. His ribs creaked under the pressure. Black spots danced in his vision. This was it. This was how he would lose. But as his consciousness began to fade, Jack remembered something from his research. Valkyrie spines were less flexible than human ones. They couldn't bend backward easily. With the last of his strength, Jack arched his back and slammed his forehead into Zora's face. The alien released him instantly. Jack fell to the ground, gasping. For air, Zora staggered backward, blue blood leaking from her nose. Her eyes blazed with anger and something else, respect. She wiped the blood away and resumed her fighting stance. The fight continued for another half hour, Jack landing occasional strikes to Zora's vulnerable areas. Zora catching Jack with glancing blows that felt like being hit by a truck. Both fighters were exhausted. Jack had a swollen eye, a dislocated finger, and bruises everywhere. Zora was moving noticeably slower, her breathing labored in the Earth atmosphere. The decisive moment came when Zora overextended on a punch. Jack sidestepped and used her momentum to pull her forward. As she stumbled past him, he struck the back of her neck with all his remaining strength. Zora crashed face first into the dirt. The crowd fell silent, waiting. For 3 heartbeats, Zora did not move. Then slowly, painfully, she rolled onto her back. She looked at Jack with those mercury eyes. "I yield," she said. Her voice was soft but clear in the silence. The crowd erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, crying and laughing. Jack stood swaying on his feet, barely able to comprehend what had happened. He had won. A mechanic from nowhere. Ohio had defeated an alien warrior. Tessa stepped into the circle. She looked at Zora, then at Jack. "The Valkyrie. Honor your victory," she announced. "You have proven humanity worthy." Jack nodded, too exhausted to speak. He watched as 2 Valkyrie helped Zora to her feet. She was unsteady, but she bowed her head to Jack as she passed, a sign of respect. What Jack did not understand was what came next. Tessa explained that according to Valkyrie custom, when a warrior was defeated in honorable combat, they pledged their life to the victor. This was not slavery. It was a bond of honor. The defeated became protector, advisor, and partner to the victor. That night, after his wounds had been treated, Jack sat in the town hall listening in disbelief as Tessa outlined what his victory meant. Zora would be bound to him. Her life was his. He was responsible for her welfare and she for his protection. This bond would last until one of them died. But wait, there's more, the mayor said, looking equally bewildered. According to Tessa, Zora's younger sister Kira was also part of the arrangement. By Valkyrie tradition, family honor was shared. If one member was bound in service, their closest relative shared that bond. Jack looked at the 2 alien women who now apparently belonged to him in some way. Zora sat straight, despite her injuries, her silver eyes unreadable. Kira was smaller than her sister, with teal skin and violet eyes. She seemed curious, studying Jack with open interest. The human officials tried to explain that Earth did not practice such customs as here. Valkyrie were confused. Why would the victor not claim their prize? The diplomatic corps suggested a compromise. The bond would be recognized as an alliance between species. Zora and Kira would live with Jack as cultural ambassadors. So Jack found himself driving home with 2 alien women in his pickup truck. Buddy, the 3-legged dog, barked excitedly when they arrived, sniffing at the newcomers with interest. Kira immediately knelt to pet him, cooing in her musical language. Zora surveyed the small house with an unreadable expression. "Welcome to Earth," Jack said, feeling completely out of his depth. "Welcome home, I guess." The first few days of living with alien roommates were awkward, to say the least. Jack had to explain everything from how the shower worked to why Buddy liked to sleep on the couch. Zora and Kira were fascinated by the most mundane things. The toaster caused great excitement. The concept of peanut butter was revolutionary. The television was studied with intense concentration. Jack's house had 2 bedrooms. He gave one to Zora and Kira and kept the other for himself. He spent the first night lying, awake listening to the strange musical language of the sisters as they discussed their new situation. He wondered what they really thought of him, of Earth, of this arrangement. In the morning he found Zora in the backyard performing what looked like a complex martial arts routine. Her movements were fluid and powerful despite her recent defeat. She acknowledged Jack with a nod but did not stop her exercise. Kira was in the kitchen examining the refrigerator with scientific curiosity. "Your food preservation technology is efficient," she said when she noticed Jack watching her. "But your nutrition seems imbalanced. Where are your protein cultures?" Jack made breakfast for everyone, scrambled eggs and toast. The sisters watched him cook with interest. Kira took notes on her alien device. Zora sniffed each ingredient before allowing it on her plate. They ate cautiously at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. "You are a food craftsman," Kira declared. Jack laughed and explained that scrambled eggs were about the simplest meal possible. She seemed disappointed to learn this. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a routine. Jack returned to his repair shop. The people of Millfield had been wary at first, but curiosity soon overcame fear. Customers came as much to see the aliens as to get their vehicles fixed. Zora often helped Jack lift heavy engine parts, her strength making quick work of tasks that would have taken Jack hours. Kira spent her time learning. She visited the local library daily. Returning with stacks of books, she read with incredible speed, absorbing information about Earth culture, history, and science. The librarian May became her first human friend, beyond Jack. They would sit for hours discussing everything from Shakespeare to quantum physics at night. Jack would teach them about human customs. They would teach him about Valkyrie ways. He learned that the Valkyrie were a matriarchal society that valued strength and knowledge equally, that physical combat was their way of testing worthiness, but art and science were equally respected. He learned that Zora and Kira were considered royalty among their people. Their mother was a fleet commander, their father, a renowned scientist. "You honor us with your victory," Zora told him one night as they sat on the porch watching the stars. "Our defeat brings new knowledge to our people." Jack was confused. "I thought you had to serve me because I won." Zora made a musical sound that he had come to recognize as laughter. "Service is not submission," she explained. "It is exchange. You won fairly. You proved humanity has strength we did not expect. We learn from you as you learn from us. This is the purpose of the bond." Jack began to understand that what he had first seen as a strange form of servitude was actually a cultural exchange. The Valkyrie believed that strength should be recognized and honored. Zora and Kira were not his servants. They were his counterparts, learning from him as he learned from them. As the weeks passed, the relationship between the three changed. Zora began to teach Jack Valkyrie combat techniques. He was a quick study, his human flexibility giving him advantages even Zora had not anticipated. Kira taught him about Valkyrie science and culture. He taught them about human emotions, about humor and music and art. The townspeople gradually accepted the aliens in their midst. Children were the first to warm up to them. They would follow Zora around, asking for demonstrations of her strength. Kira would tell them stories about the stars and the Valkyrie homeworld. The adults took longer, but curiosity eventually overcame fear. 3 months after the duel, Jack came home to find Zora repairing his truck. She had modified the engine using Valkyrie technology. It now ran more efficiently than any vehicle on Earth. Kira had created a garden behind the house, growing both Earth plants and some alien varieties she had synthesized from samples. That night, as they ate dinner, the conversation turned to the future. The diplomatic relations between Earth and the Valkyrie had progressed. The initial duels were now seen as first contact rituals. Other Valkyrie had begun to visit Earth, scientists and diplomats mostly. They were establishing formal relations. Jack asked the question that had been on his mind. "How long will you stay here?" Kira and Zora exchanged glances. "We are bound to you," Zora said. "It is a lifelong commitment." Jack frowned. "But you must miss your home, your people." Kira smiled, her violet eyes warm. "The Valkyrie believe home is where honor dwells. You honored us with fair combat and generous hospitality. This is our home now. But what about your family? Jack asked. They will visit. Kira said. They are curious about the human who defeated. Zora. Jack nearly choked on his food. The idea of meeting more Valkyrie royalty in his small house was terrifying. As spring turned to summer, Jack Wilson, the mechanic from Millfield, became something of a celebrity. The media finally caught on to his story. The man who won Earth its freedom through single combat. The ordinary guy who now lived with alien royalty reporters began to appear in town. Jack hated the attention. He had never sought fame. He had stepped forward that day simply because it seemed like the right thing to do. Now people wanted interviews. They wanted his story. They wanted to see the aliens. Zora proved surprisingly adept at handling the media. She was direct and imposing. Reporters quickly learned not to ask disrespectful questions. Kira charmed them with her intelligence and curiosity. Between them, they managed to protect Jack's privacy while satisfying the public's curiosity. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a black SUV pulled up in front of the house. Two men in suits approached. They were from the government, they explained. They wanted Jack to consider a role as an official human ambassador to the Valkyrie. His unique position made him ideal. Jack looked at Zora and Kira. The sisters nodded. Encouragingly, they had been expecting this. Jack sighed. He had never wanted to be important. He had been content fixing engines and living quietly, but the universe had other plans. I need to think about it, he told the government men. They left him their card. Jack sat on the porch long after they left, wondering how his life had taken such a strange turn. That night, as Jack lay awake, considering the offer, he heard soft footsteps outside his door. A gentle knock. Zora stood there, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, her mercury eyes reflecting the moonlight from the window. May I enter? She asked formally. Jack nodded, suddenly nervous. Zora sat on the edge of his bed. You are troubled, she observed. Jack sighed. I never asked for any of this. I just wanted to help my town. I don't know how to be an ambassador. Zora was quiet for a moment. You did not ask to be a champion either, she said. But you stepped forward. You did what was needed. That is the essence of leadership. But what if I fail? Jack asked. What if I make things worse between our people? Zora did something surprising. She took his hand. Her blue skin was warm against his. A small smile curved her lips. Then we will face that challenge together. That is what the bond means, as she spoke. Kira appeared in the doorway. She joined them, sitting on Jack's other side. We are your advisors, your protectors, she said. Her violet eyes were kind. You are not alone in this. Jack looked at the two alien women who had come into his life. So unexpectedly, they were no longer strange to him. They were family in a way he couldn't quite define. But he knew he trusted them. He knew they trusted him. Whatever came next, they would face it together. In that moment, Jack made his decision. He would accept the ambassador's role not because he felt qualified, but because it was needed. He had Zora and Kira to guide him. They had knowledge of both worlds. Together, perhaps they could build something lasting between their peoples. The universe was vast and strange, full of challenges and wonders. Humanity was taking its first steps into that larger universe. And somehow a mechanic from Ohio found himself leading the way. 6 months after the duel, Jack found himself in Washington, D.C. The government had provided a spacious apartment for him, Zora and Kira. His days were filled with meetings, briefings, and diplomatic functions. His mechanical skills were rarely needed. Now instead he was called upon to explain humanity to the Valkyrie, and the Valkyrie to humanity. Zora had become his security chief. Her imposing presence and tactical mind made her perfect for the role. She coordinated with both human and Valkyrie security teams, ensuring Jack's safety as he moved between diplomatic functions. When not on duty, she continued to train him in Valkyrie combat techniques. He was becoming quite skilled, though he would never match her raw strength. Kira served as cultural attaché. Her brilliant mind and natural curiosity had made her a favorite among the scientific community. She had mastered 7 human languages and was helping develop a comprehensive Valkyrie English dictionary. Her insights into both cultures proved invaluable during negotiations. Jack missed his simple life in Millfield. He missed fixing engines and talking with customers. He missed Buddy, though the three-legged dog had adjusted well to apartment living, but he understood the importance of his new role. Earth and Valkyrie were establishing trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. His unique position as both human champion and bond partner to Valkyrie royalty made him the ideal bridge between worlds. The diplomatic course had initially been skeptical of Jack. He had no formal education in international relations, no experience in politics, but he had something more valuable: honesty. The Valkyrie respected his straightforward approach. He did not engage in the doublespeak so common among diplomats. If he disagreed, he said so. If he didn't understand, he asked questions. His authenticity earned him respect from both sides. One evening, after a particularly tense negotiation session about technology sharing, Jack found Zora on the balcony of their apartment. She was staring at the stars, her silver hair glowing in the moonlight. He joined her, leaning on the railing. "Tough day," he commented. Zora nodded. "Your military leaders are cautious. They fear our weapons." Jack sighed. "They have reason to be careful. Humans have a long history of using technology against each other." Zora turned to look at him, her mercury eyes reflecting the city lights. "The Valkyrie were once the same," she admitted. "Strength was all that mattered. Victory at any cost. But we learned, such thinking leads to destruction, not growth." It was rare for Zora to speak of Valkyrie history. Jack listened intently as she continued. "Our world nearly died," she said. "Weapons of great power, territorial disputes. We stood at the edge of extinction. Then came the awakening. The understanding that true strength lies not in domination, but in advancement. We turned our warrior culture toward self-improvement, toward exploration." Jack understood why she was telling him this. The negotiations were not just about technology. They were about trust, about sharing knowledge with a species that might not be ready. "How can I convince them that we won't repeat your mistakes?" Jack asked. "You cannot," Zora said simply. "Each species must find its own path. But you can show them the possibilities. Alliance brings benefits. Conflict brings only loss." The next day, Jack approached the negotiations differently. Instead of focusing on specific technologies, he asked the Valkyrie representatives to share their history, how they had moved from a society of conflict to one of structured challenge and advancement. The human delegates listened with growing interest as the Valkyrie described their transition. Jack then suggested a compromise: Earth would receive Valkyrie medical and environmental technology immediately. Military and weapons technology would wait until joint ethics committees could be established to oversee implementation. To his surprise, both sides agreed. This small breakthrough earned Jack commendations from his superiors. Life settled into a new normal. Jack, Zora, and Kira became a team, each with their own role to play in the growing alliance. Between diplomatic functions, they explored human culture. Together, Zora developed a fondness for action movies. Kira became obsessed with human literature, particularly mysteries and science fiction. Jack introduced them to human food, music, and art. They taught him about Valkyrie philosophy, science, and customs. As their bond deepened, Jack began to notice subtle changes. Zora smiled more often, her formal manner giving way to genuine warmth. Kira, who had always been more expressive, became even more integrated into human society, making friends among the diplomatic corps. The three of them began to feel like a family, albeit an unusual one. 1 year after the duel, Jack received word that the Valkyrie High Command would be visiting Earth. This was unprecedented. The leaders of the Valkyrie rarely left their homeworld. Their arrival would mark a significant advancement in relations between the species. Jack was informed that as bond partner to Valkyrie royalty, he would be expected to host the High Commander. The High Commander turned out to be Zora and Kira's mother. She arrived in a massive ship that dwarfed all previous Valkyrie vessels. She was escorted by an honor guard of 12 warriors, each more impressive than Zora. Jack watched from the landing pad as the ramp lowered, revealing a tall, imposing female with deep blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to pierce right through him. Lysera approached Jack flanked by her guards. She towered over him even more than Zora did. Her gaze was calculating, assessing. At her signal, the guards stopped, allowing her to approach Jack alone. She studied him in silence for what felt like an eternity. So she finally said, her voice deep and musical, "You are the human who defeated my daughter." Jack swallowed nervously. "Yes." "Hi, Commander. Call me Lysera." She said we are family after all. To Jack's surprise, Lysera embraced him. The gesture was formal but genuine. Zora and Kira knelt before their mother, who touched their heads in blessing. Then all three turned to Jack expectantly. He realized this was a Valkyrie family reunion, and he was part of it. The diplomatic implications of Lysera's visit were enormous. She met with world leaders, toured major cities, and observed human culture firsthand, but she spent her evenings with Jack and her daughters. In these private moments, she revealed a different side, curious, intelligent, with a dry wit that reminded Jack of Zora. One night after Kira had retired, Lysera asked to speak with Jack alone. They sat on the balcony overlooking the city. "You have changed, my daughter," she observed. Jack was startled. "I have." Lysera nodded. Zora was always serious, dedicated to duty only. Now she laughs. She speaks of music and art. Kira was always curious but unfocused. Now she has purpose, direction. Jack wasn't sure how to respond. Should he apologize? Lysera seemed to read his thoughts. "It is good," she assured him. "The bond has benefited both sides, as it should." She paused, looking at the stars visible through the city lights. "You must understand, Jack Wilson. The bond between you and my daughters is more than our tradition dictated." "What do you mean?" Jack asked. Lysera turned her silver eyes to him. "Among the Valkyrie, a bond formed in combat is sacred, but rarely does it transform into true companionship. You and my daughters have forged something new, something that might show both our peoples a path forward." Jack thought about his life with Zora and Kira, how they had moved from awkward strangers to trusted friends to something he couldn't quite define. Family but different. Believe, she continued, that the future of both our species may depend on such bonds, not formed through combat but through understanding. As you have demonstrated, Jack felt the weight of her words. This was bigger than him, bigger than Millfield, Ohio, bigger even than Earth and the Valkyrie. This was about the future of interspecies relations. Before Lysera departed, she made an announcement that shocked the diplomatic community. Earth would be invited to join the Galactic Conclave, a gathering of spacefaring species from across the galaxy. This was unprecedented. No species had ever been invited before, proving themselves through centuries of peaceful expansion. When asked why the Valkyrie would extend such an honor, Lysera gestured to Jack, standing with Zora and Kira. "We have seen what humans and Valkyrie can accomplish together," she said. "This alliance has shown us new possibilities." As Lysera's ship departed, Jack stood with his alien family, watching it rise into the clouds. Zora placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle despite her strength. Kira held his other hand, her violet eyes bright with excitement. "Where do we go from here?" Jack asked. Zora smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her usually serious face. "Upward." She said always upward. 5 years passed. Earth changed dramatically. Valkyrie technology helped solve environmental crises, clean energy became standard, and medical advances cured diseases thought incurable. The cultural exchange flourished, with humans learning Valkyrie, combat arts, and philosophy, while the Valkyrie embraced human creativity and individualism. Jack Wilson was no longer just an ambassador. He was the head of the Human Valkyrie Alliance, an organization dedicated to fostering cooperation between the species. He still felt like a mechanic playing dress-up sometimes, especially during formal functions where he had to wear the ceremonial garb of both cultures, but he had grown into his role. His straightforward approach and genuine desire to understand had earned him respect throughout the diplomatic community. Zora had established a training academy where she taught Valkyrie combat techniques to selected humans and human adaptability to Valkyrie warriors. The exchange had produced fighters with unique hybrid styles. The first mixed human Valkyrie combat tournament had been a resounding success broadcast across both worlds. Kyra had become a leading scientist heading research into the integration of Valkyrie and human technology. Her team had developed innovations neither species could have created alone. Her natural curiosity and brilliant mind had found their perfect application. Jack, Zora, and Kira had returned to Millfield several times. The small town had become something of a pilgrimage site for Valkyrie visitors. Buddy the three-legged dog had lived out his final years in comfort, eventually passing peacefully surrounded by his unusual family. Jack had mourned him deeply. The Valkyrie had been fascinated by his attachment to the animal, but they had respected his grief. Zora had even performed a Valkyrie memorial ritual, which had brought Jack unexpected comfort. Their relationship had evolved over the years. What had begun as an awkward arrangement based on alien custom had become something unique and precious. Jack could not imagine his life without Zora and Kira. Zora was his strength, his protector. His feelings for her had deepened into something he hesitated to name. Kira was his guide, his companion, bringing light and curiosity to his days. The three of them had settled into a comfortable routine, spending their days in their respective roles and their evenings together, sharing meals, discussing the days, events, and planning for the future. They had a home in Washington and another in Millfield. They traveled frequently both on Earth and occasionally to other planets, where Valkyrie influence had prepared the way for human contact. Earth's invitation to the Galactic Conclave had been controversial. Some species objected to admitting such a young civilization. Others were curious about the species that had so quickly formed an alliance with the warrior Valkyrie. The first conclave, attended by human representatives, was tense, but productive. Earth was granted provisional membership, a significant achievement, on the 5th anniversary of the Duel. Jack, Zora, and Kira returned to Millfield. The town had grown. A Valkyrie cultural center had been established alongside a human Valkyrie research facility. The cornfield where the alien ships had first landed was now a memorial park, with a simple stone marker commemorating the duel that had changed two worlds. The town threw a celebration combining human and Valkyrie traditions. There was music and food from both cultures, demonstrations of combat skills and scientific achievements. Children ran about, some blue-skinned, some human. Many friends despite their differences. Jack watched it all with a sense of wonder. This was what he had helped create, not through grand vision or political skill, but through simple human decency. That evening, Jack sat on the porch of his old house, now maintained as a historic site. Zora and Kira joined him. The three of them watched the sunset in comfortable silence. "Did you ever think it would turn out like this?" Jack asked finally. Zora shook her head, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. "Never," she admitted. "I expected to defeat you quickly and return to my duties. I did not expect a human to change my understanding of strength." Kira smiled, her violet eyes warm. "I hope to learn about humans," she said. "I did not expect to find a home." Jack looked at them, the aliens who had become his family. Their blue and teal skin no longer seemed strange. To him, their silver and violet eyes were as familiar as his own reflection in the mirror. They had faced challenges together, celebrated victories, mourned losses. They had created something new. Something neither human nor Valkyrie, but a bridge between worlds. A messenger arrived as darkness fell. A young Valkyrie warrior who bowed formally to all three of them. "The High Commander requests your presence," she said. "The Conclave has reached a decision." Jack, Zora, and Kira exchanged glances. This was what they had been working toward. For 5 years, they had advocated for Earth's full membership in the Galactic Conclave. The vote had been scheduled for today. They traveled to the Valkyrie diplomatic ship in orbit above Earth. Lysera met them in the command center. Her expression gave nothing away. Jack had learned to read Valkyrie body language over the years, but Lysera was a master of control. "The Conclave has voted," she announced finally. Jack held his breath. He felt Zora and Kira tense beside him. This meant everything for Earth's future, for humanity's place among the stars. "Earth has been granted full membership," Lysera said. Her mercury eyes shone with satisfaction. The vote was unanimous. Jack could hardly believe it. Unanimous. No species had ever been admitted with unanimous approval. Zora gripped his shoulder, her strength carefully controlled. Kira made a musical sound of joy. There is more. Lysera continued. The Conclave was impressed by the success of your bond. They have proposed a new initiative, the exchange of strengths. Selected representatives from all member species will form bonds similar to yours, living together, learning from each other, creating connections between worlds. They wish for you three to oversee. The program. Jack was stunned. What had begun as a strange custom forced upon him was now being proposed as a model for interspecies relations across the galaxy. He looked at Zora and Kira, his partners in this unexpected journey. They nodded encouragingly. Well, Jack said, I guess we have work to do. In the years that followed, the Exchange of Strengths program flourished. Bonds formed between humans and a dozen alien species, each bringing their unique perspectives and abilities. Some bonds were challenging at first, just as Jack's had been. But with patience and understanding, most developed into productive partnerships. Jack, Zora, and Kira traveled extensively, overseeing the program. They visited worlds Jack had never imagined, saw wonders that left him speechless. Through it all, their bond deepened. Zora still trained Jack in combat, though he would never match her. Their sparring sessions had become a form of communication, a way of expressing things words could not capture. Kira still shared her discoveries with childlike enthusiasm, her mind constantly finding connections between disparate fields of knowledge. 20 years after the duel, Jack stood on the observation deck of a Valkyrie ship, watching Earth grow smaller as they headed to yet another conclave. Meeting, his hair had grayed, his face had lined, but he still felt strong, still felt purpose. His life had taken a turn. He could never have predicted that day in Millfield when he stepped forward to face an alien warrior. Zora joined him at the viewport. Her blue skin had deepened with age. Silver streaks ran through her hair, but her mercury eyes were as sharp as ever. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that had become natural over the years. Regrets, she asked. Jack shook his head. None, he said. And you? Zora smiled, a full smile so different from the predatory grin she had shown him before their duel. None, she confirmed. I lost that day, but I gained much more than I lost. Kira entered, bringing cups of a steaming beverage that blended Valkyrie herbs and human tea. She handed them around, her violet eyes bright with excitement about the upcoming conclave. She had a new proposal to present, a further integration of technologies. Jack sipped his tea, watching his family, his partners, his alien wives, though the term hardly seemed adequate for what they had become to each other. He thought about the mechanic from Ohio, who had stepped forward to protect his town. How could he have known that simple act would change not just his life but the course of human history? The stars streaked past the viewport as the ship accelerated toward the conclave. The future beckoned, full of challenges and possibilities. Jack was no longer afraid. He had Zora and Kira beside him. Together, they had faced the unknown and found not just survival but connection. They had taken an ancient Valkyrie tradition and transformed it into something new, something hopeful. Somewhere in the vast universe, other bonds were forming, other bridges being built, between different worlds, different ways of thinking. Jack Wilson, the reluctant champion of Earth, had shown it was possible. His unexpected journey from mechanic to diplomat to galactic pioneer had opened doors no one had imagined existed. As the ship carried them toward their next adventure, Jack felt a sense of completion. The bond that had been forced upon him had become the foundation of his life, the most valuable thing he had ever known. Not a burden, but a gift, one that continued to transform not just 3 lives but entire civilizations. This was not the end of their story. Jack knew it was simply another beginning, another chapter in the ongoing tale of humanity and its place among the stars. A tale that had begun in the dirt of a small town square with a duel between a mechanic and an alien warrior. A tale of strength, honor, and the unexpected connections that can form between the most different of beings.